Room 7. So we are continuing Chapter 11, Miss Bixby's Last Day. Last we left off, we're hearing it from Topher's perspective, and Steve just stood up to his sister. So I asked you all to think about how their relationship has changed in this story. We know that Steve was ready, Steve's sister, Cristine, was ready to call the mom, but Steve let her know that he had it handled. So, yeah, we're just going to continue from Topher's perspective. They just got their order of McDonald's fries, which we know is the last thing they need before they head to Miss Bixby. You can't always pinpoint the moment everything changes. Most of the time, it's gradual, like grass growing or fog settling, or your armpit starting to smell by mid-afternoon. And even when it does come down to one moment, it's not always what you expect. It's not some big announcements from the heavens telling you that you are the chosen one. It's not some magnificent charge through enemy lines with the orchestra swelling behind you. Instead, it's something smaller, like standing up to your sister at the McDonald's or facing off against some flop sucker in an alley behind the Walgreens. So we know he's thinking back to George Nelson. And we know that Steve usually imagines a lot. So he's realizing these special moments are feeling a little bit not as grand as it might seem on the screen, but still special. Or even catching your teacher sifting through the trash and seeing what she keeps tucked in her bottom drawer. I caught her after school, Miss Bixby going through the recycling bin, taking stuff, my stuff. It had been an unusually dull Thursday, with tests to see how we do on later tests, and tests to verify how we did on earlier tests, but no omens to suggest my life was about to change, no squawking crows or black cats, no dark, smoky writing across the sky. It was pouring rain, so I suppose that counts for something. Though at the time, it just meant we couldn't go out for recess. You guys remember rainy day recess? We sat in our corner of room 213 instead, the three of us. Brad messing around on one of the class iPads, and Steve getting his homework done ahead of time, knowing he'd be asked about it as soon as he got home. I did what I usually do, doodled on a piece of scrap paper I found at my desk. The back of some fraction worksheet long ago graded. I was supposed to take it home to show my parents, but I wasn't sure they'd really care about a B- and finding common denominators. My sketchbook was in my bag by the door, and I was too lazy to get it. Besides, I had spotted a spider foolishly trying to set up shop in our same corner by the radiator, and didn't want to miss the chance to capture it on paper. It would only be a matter of time before Trevor or one of the other barbarians saw it and destroyed it. So I tried to sketch it as a tribute to its brave stupidity. I drew for the whole time and just about finished when Miss Bixby told us to get ready to go to the gym. I showed Bran, who said it was pretty good, which is what he always says. He's a little like my parents that way. It was good, but not great. Not worth keeping anyway. So I tossed the paper in the recycling bin and didn't think another thing of it. I was supposed to be picked up that day by my mom, who had all but disappeared that week, working 3 12-hour shifts in a row, and who wanted to make it up by taking me out for ice cream, just the two of us. Except the office called down to say she was running late, which didn't surprise me at all. I went back to 213 looking for a book to pass the time, knowing Ms. B had plenty to choose from. That's when I spied her. I stood in the doorway, watching her bent over the recycling tub, hair falling down her face, a sheet of paper in her hand. She was wearing a buttery yellow sundress that day with a white sweater so thin it looked like it might fly off the summer wind. Lose something, I said. Miss Bixby jumped, startled, and I saw what she was holding. Not only could I see my name in the grade, but I could see the outline of the spider seeping through the other side. She looked at me guiltily, as if she was caught her changing the scores on our standardized test. Oh, hi, Topher, she said, staring. Wasn't your mom supposed to pick you up? I shrugged. She's running late. I thought I'd see if you had something to read. What's that? I pointed at her hand, knowing perfectly well what it was, wanting to know why she was holding it. Maybe she was double-checking my grade. Maybe she thought I deserved at least a B plus. Miss Bixby looked at the drawing and smiled. "It's a spider," she said. "Building a web, obviously." I glanced instinctively at the corner I had been sitting on hours before. The web was still there. Miraculously, but the spider was gone. I hoped it hadn't been crushed. "I guess I meant, why are you holding it?" Miss Bixby's mouth opened and closed twice, like she was trying to figure out how to make it work. It was an awkward moment. "I was actually going to hang on to it," she admitted finally. "I like it." "Oh," I said. Miss Bixby looked intently at the drawing now, tracing the pattern of the web with one finger. "I didn't think you'd mind," she said. "I mean, you did throw it away." "No, you're right, I did," I said. What did that mean? She liked it. Like she was going to put a smiley face sticker on it? Like she was going to show it off to the class? Or like she really honestly liked it? "Is there a reason you threw it away?" "I don't know. I guess I just didn't know what else to do with it," I said. "You didn't think it was worth keeping?" she prodded. I looked into the recycling bin. Stories and papers and quizzes, ripped up cootie catchers and paper planes made out of Post-it notes, a whole week's worth of work and play. "I guess not," I said. I thought about my fridge at home, how when I was little it was full of papers and drawings hanging from magnet clips. Now it was covered in takeout menus and school reminders. Miss Bixby smiled. The smile that makes you feel like she's about to tell you a secret. Most of the time it really meant she was going to recite one of her quotes or tell you to behave, but in this case the smile held even more promise. She beckoned me over to her desk and sat on the edge. "Topher, Wren, what I am about to show you stays between us, understood?" I nodded dumbly. "That means Steve and Brand too," she emphasized. "I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, so you have to promise." Gave it some thought. That would be rough. I told Steve practically everything. Miss Bixby obviously knew how things were between us. "I promise," I said. It would probably be worth it. I felt like Lucy Pevensie lost in the wardrobe, like Harry looking into the pensieve, yeah. My fingers tingled. I could keep promises if I had to, but I crossed my feet just in case. I don't think she noticed. "Do you know Susanna Gibbons?" Miss Bixby asked. I shook my head. The name sounded slightly familiar, like something I might have heard on the radio or television commercial. Turns out I was way off. "She's a former student of mine. She's in high school now. Sweet kid, very bright, but very shy. Kept to herself mostly." "Like Steve?" I said. "Like a lot of kids I know," Miss Bixby said, one eyebrow raised. "Susanna was a writer, probably the best young writer I've ever taught." I nodded, feeling a little flash of jealousy. Unlike my math quizzes, which I couldn't copy off Steve on the bus, like the homework, everything I wrote for Miss Bixby's class got A's. Nobody wants to hear how some complete stranger was so much better than them at something they took pride in. Then again, Miss Bixby was still holding my spider. "It was her poetry that got me," Miss Bixby continued. "It was intricate and complex and full of imagery and emotion. She would write her poems on scraps of paper, just like this." Miss Bixby held up the drawing. "Whenever she had free time in class, I would find her working on them. Some she kept, some she threw away, but she never showed anyone. Not that I know of, not even the few girls in the class she got along with. Except one day I found one, same place as your drawing, and I took it and wrote a note on it and put it back in her desk." "What did the note say?" I asked. Miss Bixby put a finger to her lips. "I can't tell you. That's between me and Susanna, and promises are promises. But I can tell you the next day when she opened her desk, she looked at me. She didn't say anything. She never said anything, not directly. But later that week, I found another poem sitting on my desk, hidden underneath my keyboard. Then another and another, a poem a week. Sometimes two. I started keeping them in a red folder. Miss Bixby slipped off the desk, smoothed out her dress, and pulled open her bottom drawer. I leaned in close. The drawer clicked and slid. Inside was a half-eaten bag of pretzel sticks, an empty bottle of Frappuccino, There was a wire rack holding at least 24 manila folders, all labeled with what you'd expect: lesson plans and grade reports, math worksheets and tardy slips. Ms. Bixby knelt down and pushed past the plain folders to reveal a second row of folders behind, all different colored folders. The one in front was red. I can't let you read them. They aren't for sharing, but I thought you might want to see what happened after that first day. She pulled it out and set it on the desk. The red folder labeled Susanna Gibbons was bursting. Even at 2 poems a week, there was no way she could have filled it that full. Even if she spent all of her time in class writing odes during recess in the morning and in the lunch line, there was just no way. Possible, I said. This isn't just from when she was my student. She's been emailing me ever since, Miss Bixby explained. I print them out and keep them in here. I casually ran my thumb along the edge, ruffling the pages. That's hers, she said. Yours, on the other hand. Miss Bixby bent down again and reached over the rainbow array of folders, only half a dozen, and retrieved the green folder in the back of the drawer, the very last one. It was thin, probably only 10 sheets or so. It had my name on the front in black marker, just Topher, no last name. She set it on top of Susanna Gibbons' folder and stepped aside so I could see. Inside were drawings, my drawings. Most of them were doodles scrawled carelessly on the back of tests or quizzes. One was a photocopy of a sketch I had made in art class when we had a sub. Another was a picture I had sold to Kyle Kipperson for a quarter, only to have him wad it up and throw it away. Miss Bixby had saved it, unraveled it, pressed it flat, and stuck it in the folder with the rest. They were all discards, throwaways. You kept these? Miss B nodded. Remember what I always wanted to be when I grew up, before I decided to become a teacher? Maggie the Magnificent, I mumbled, thumbing through my sketches, looking at them again, trying to see whatever it was that she saw in them. Something I must have missed the first time. Master illusionist. And my big trick, pulling my pet gerbil for my hat, and how your grandmother tried to step on it, I added, pausing at a drawing I'd made of Steve and his chin on his fist, styled after the famous statue of the guy who thinks too hard. Except I never told you why I gave up, Miss Bixby said. It was the laughter. My parents, my grandparents, my brother, all laughing about it afterward, talking about how I'd messed up the trick. Like it was all a big joke. I was a comedian, not a magician. They would keep telling that story the rest of their life with their friends, at the dinner table, and every time they would laugh all over again. I ran to my room that day and cried. They didn't get it. This was supposed to be my breakout moment, but to them, I was just a kid playing pretend. I stopped paging through the green folder and looked at Miss Bixby. She always seemed so confident, so one step ahead of the rest, but now she looked different, uncertain. It's funny how, as kids, we get these ideas in our head about what's possible and what's not. One day we're invincible, the next day we're afraid of what's in the closet. I grew up wanting to be a magician, but I became a teacher instead. Teaching is wonderful, don't get me wrong, but it's not every 10-year-old's dream. I shook my head. So what? You screwed up on one trick. You could still be a magician, I said, trying to sound as inspirational as she did when she would spout her quotes. What's stopping you? Miss Bixby laughed, and her laughter made me feel foolish for some reason, probably the same way she felt after she failed at her grand finale. Oh, Topher, there are so many things stopping me. You have no idea, she said, as if there were 100 secrets she wasn't about to share. But this isn't about me. This isn't my folder. It's yours. I looked at my drawings. Sword-wielding warlords, masked vigilantes, but also a sketch of the willow tree outside room 213. I closed the folder and looked at Miss B. We all have moments when we think nobody really sees us, when we feel like we have to act out or be somebody else just to get noticed. But somebody notices, Topher. Somebody sees. Somebody out there probably thinks you're the greatest thing in the whole world. Don't ever think you're not good enough. She reached to the desk and took up the drawing of the spider, holding it out to me. I won't keep it if you don't want me to. I won't keep any of them. They aren't mine, and I should have asked. If you still don't think it's worthwhile, we can put it right back where you left it, but I like it. I think it's one of your best. The drawing floated between Miss Bixby and me, hovering beside the secret bottom drawer where Miss Bixby kept a half a dozen dreams. None of them were her dream, but she kept them safe anyways. I took the picture, the one she'd rescued, and I opened the folder again and put it on top. I can see the hospital from Mcdonald's, a dozen or so floors stretching skyward. It should have taken us 3 minutes to walk there, but we aren't moving as fast as we started this morning, full of raisins and confidence and grand plans. I'm still limping and Steve seems woozy. I'm not sure if it's from George Nelson's left hook or from finally mustering up the guts to stand up to Christina, but he staggers like a boxer after 9 rounds. I'm holding the bag of fries, which are already making grease spots through the paper. In my backpack sits a tattered paper back and a pair of now useless speakers. They were supposed to be hooked up to Steve's phone to play music, Beethoven, or whatever else he loaded up, but the phone is dead. No music, no wine. At least we still have the cheesecake, sort of, and the French fries, and the picture. The one tucked away in the second half of my now torn sketchbook. The one that Bran discovered and went all Gollum my precious about. I had planned to give it to her when nobody was looking. Leave it on the table or tuck it under the pillow. Somewhere she might find it later. Or maybe a nurse would pick it up and show it to her and say something like, "This is really good. Is this you?" She would know who did it, of course, and she would smile and say, "Yes, it's me. And where did that come from?" Then later, she'd stick it in the green folder in the bottom drawer. Maybe she would keep it somewhere else, somewhere closer. The whole trip over, Bran stays behind us so that it's just Steve and me together, the two wounded warriors bumping into each other because neither of us can seem to walk straight. "You might have said there was a chance of running into your sister downtown today," I said. "That might have been incorporated into the plan somehow. Though I'm not sure what we would have done about it. Disguises maybe, ski masks. So 3 boys wearing ski masks in the McDonald's probably would have caused its own share of problems. The odds were against us," Steve replies, 100 to 1. It shouldn't have happened. And yet it did. "That's called destiny," I said. "She's your Voldemort." Christina looked nothing like Voldemort. She needs to be balder and paler and a man. But throw a black robe on him, paint a scar on his forehead, and give him a stick to wave around, and Steve could probably pull off Harry Potter, at least the Japanese version. Steve frowns. "She's not my Voldemort. She was just looking out for me." "Cha!" I scoffed. "Only because she was hoping to get you into trouble. She probably lied to us. She's probably calling your parents right now and telling them everything." I looked behind me, half expecting to see Steve's father's trailing us in a black Nissan, waiting for just the right moment to cut us off and shove us into the trunk to be delivered directly to Principal McNasty's clutches. "She's not going to call," Steve says. "She promised she wouldn't tell." "And you believe her?" Steve shrugged. "She's my sister, Topher. Sure, she's annoying and bossy, and sometimes I can't stand how good she is at everything, but that doesn't mean I hate her or anything. You shouldn't give her such a hard time." "Me?" "Yes, you. You exacerbate the situation." "I do not exacerbate," I say. "Wait, what's exacerbate mean?" "You make it worse," Steve explains. "You egg her on." I kick at the gravel on the sidewalk. Maybe he has a point. He usually does. Maybe I do exacerbate sometimes, but that didn't make his sister not annoying. I glance over my shoulder. Brand is lagging farther and farther behind, like he's having second thoughts. Again. But we are way too close to give up now. "So what did she say to you back there when you two were whispering?" Steve tells me everything. Anything anybody ever whispered to him. I would hear about it eventually. Not that anyone but me whispered anything to him usually. "She asked if I was really okay," Steve tells me, "and if I really wanted her to take me home, but was afraid to say it in front of you guys. Oh, and she told me I should probably stop listening to you all the time. She thinks you're trouble." "She thinks I'm trouble," I sputter. "She says you're no good for me. She thinks I could do better." My mouth hangs. "Do better than me? Not likely. I'm definitely the cooler than anyone else in your life, especially her." Steve shrugs. "You asked me what she said, so I told you." "Yeah, well, I hope one of her furry patients bites her and gives her rabies," I say. Then I think about it, what it would be like if Steve took her advice and ditched me for somebody else, found another best friend. I didn't know if I could take it. "And what did you say to her when she asked that?" Steve looked down at his feet, shuffling along the sidewalk. I told her that nobody's perfect, he mumbles, and then adds with a grin, and that you were infinitely cooler than anyone else in my life. Especially her? Especially her, Steve repeats. Then he looks up and points. We're there. St. Mary's Hospital looms over us, 2 big buildings connected by overstreet walkways. Steve told me once that there were 10,000 different saints, that Catholicism is the hallmark of religions, a saint for every occasion. There's a saint for Canadians and lepers. There are saints for alcoholics and reformed alcoholics, and for people who are named Joshua, St. Joshua. There is a saint for artists too. St. Catherine of Bologna, the city, not the lunch meat. Hold on, guys. Okay, I'm gonna let that play well. I don't know what that is. Okay, it's done. Okay, sorry. There is a saint for artists too, St. Catherine of Bologna, the city, not the lunch meat. Steve says that's the one who probably watches over me, her and St. Christopher, who usually looks after sailors, motorists, people with toothaches, though I get an automatic because of my name. Of all 10,000, though, I can only assume Mary is the first round pick, if not the number 1 overall. Miss Bixby is in good hands. I could see the main entrance, and I stop for a moment and wait for the clouds to part, splitting to reveal a ray of sunshine like a tractor beam that will bathe St. Mary's in a sparkling pool of light. I see it clear in my head, clear enough. I can even hear the choir, but it doesn't happen. It's just the hospital. Steel and dark, glass, sand-colored stone. Though compared to the rest of the buildings around it, it looks like brand new and imposing, like some kind of impenetrable fortress. You think she'll be happy to see us, I ask? I don't know, Steve said. But we should definitely still go, right? I think the fries are getting cold. I take that as a yes. We stop at the automatic revolving doors and wait for Bran to catch up. We look like we should be going through the ER entrance instead, Steve says, prodding at his puffy lip. I'm limping, he's bloody, our clothes are filthy from too much time sitting on curbs, rolling on sidewalks, getting knocked to the ground, or hiding behind dumpsters. I reach over and do my best to tame Steve's hair. I don't even bother with mine. Lost cause. We made it, I say. Through fire and flipwads and stuffed owls and sharks in toilets, we are finally here. So why am I even more nervous all of a sudden? Brandon steps up behind us, hands stuffed in his pockets. About time, Steve says, and we both turn and head towards the door. Brand doesn't move. Dude, are you coming? I hold up the bag of French fries like it's a ticking time bomb, wondering what could possibly be holding him back. Hang on, he says. Before we go in, there's something I've got to tell you. End of chapter. So we know Miss Bixby had a moment with Steve where she, the times she allowed him to be himself, to be curious, to be smart, and she challenged him. Not Topher, but Steve, right? And she also kept the ribbon that didn't mean a lot to his parents, but meant so much to him. Now we learned about how she was keeping Topher's dreams and other students' dreams, even though her dream didn't get to manifest or didn't get to come true. So we're learning about the impact she had. And I'm also thinking about why the author wrote this book, John David Anderson, and just that idea of dreams and being seen. Miss Bixby is seeing people and students that are tossing things in the recycling. And I think the author really wants students to think about their dreams and how you might not know, but whatever you have is super special and somebody's going to recognize it someday if they haven't already. So in the next chapter is Brand, and we know they finally made it to the hospital, but he's stalling. So I don't feel like we've learned the complete story yet of why Miss Bixby means so much to Brand. So that's to come. So next week, tune in.